Last week in Michigan politics, some Democrats in Michigan split on whether to stand behind their current nominee for president or call for a switch, what the different sides of this internal party debate are saying. Plus, amid that ongoing conversation and speculation, 13 on Your Side sits down for an exclusive interview with California Governor Gavin Newsom, seen by many as a top contender to replace President Biden on the ticket should he step aside, why he was here, and why he says he's sticking with the president. And it's time to vote, not at the polls, but for what you'll get at the polls. How you can make your voice heard as part of the state's first ever I Voted sticker competition. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side rundown. We start with your voice, your vote, and the continuing conversation within the Democratic Party about whether President Joe Biden should continue in his bid for re-election, following what many have seen as a poor debate performance last month. Just Wednesday, Democratic donor and actor George Clooney and New York Representative Pat Ryan becoming the latest to call on the president to exit the race. Before we get to what some party leaders here in Michigan have to say, here's ABC's Perry Russum in Washington.
This morning, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi on MSNBC stopping short of giving President Biden a full endorsement to continue his campaign.
Does he have your support to be the head of the Democratic ticket?
As long as the president it's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short.
Do you want him to run?
I want him to do whatever he decides to do.
In a statement, the Biden campaign responding to Pelosi saying he's running. Senator Michael Bennet on CNN last night, the newest Democratic lawmaker, publicly calling on Biden to drop out.
Donald Trump is on track, I think, to win this election and maybe win it by a landslide and take with him the Senate and the House.
House Democrats meeting for hours yesterday behind closed doors discussing the future of the party. Sources calling the meeting rough. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer asked several questions about his confidence on Biden's chances to win in November, responding to each question, saying this.
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
The president under the microscope this week on the world stage for the NATO summit in Washington. Last night, Biden announcing a historic weapons deal with Ukraine.
The United States and our partners intend to provide Ukraine with dozens of additional tactical air defense systems.
His opponent, former President Trump, back on the campaign trail with a rally in Florida.
The truth is, it doesn't matter who they nominate because we are going to beat any one of them in thundering landslides.
And we are still waiting on Trump to announce his pick for vice president. His advisors say that could happen by Monday at the start of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Perry Russum, ABC News, Washington.
And amid the national conversation, a high-profile name in the Democratic Party was in West Michigan campaigning for President Biden. California Governor Gavin Newsom was in South Haven last week at a Van Buren County Democratic Party event. Newsom said he's not worried about the president's age and ability after his performance at last month's debate against Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Michigan Republican Chair Pete Hoekstra said Newsom's visit shows just how out of touch the Biden administration is to the struggles Michiganders face. And Governor Newsom also sat down for an exclusive interview with 13 on Your Side to talk about why he's so staunchly supporting the president's re-election campaign. It's a conversation you won't see anywhere else in West Michigan.
So obviously, 4th of July, very big holiday, but you were in Van Buren County today. Why? Why was that?
I think it's because we haven't had a lot of surrogates out there. So I think we wanted to fill that void and make a case that everybody matters, every part of this state matters, every part of this country matters, and we're not leaving anything to chance with the Biden-Harris campaign. So I was honored to take the baton, came to the White House last night, met with the president, and now we're out on the road and heading to Pittsburgh tomorrow night.
There's that conversation going on when it comes to the president's re-election campaign that you're here for today, and whether or not the president should stay in the race, especially as, we see, other parts of the country speculate about your own name. Should that be the scenario where the president decides to remove himself from the race? You have remained a staunch ally and supporter of his staying in the race. Why is that?
Well, maybe I'm a little old-fashioned. My dad used to remind me all the time, said, you go home with the one who brought you to the dance. I don't turn my back because he had a tough debate, 90-minute debate, and turn my back to the accomplishments of the last 3.5 years. I've had the privilege, the pleasure of seeing the results firsthand in the largest state in our union, size of 21 state populations combined, California, the tentpole of the American economy in terms of jobs, and one of the fastest and largest GDPs in the world. And so I've just seen the benefits of the CHIPS and Science Act. I've seen the benefits of the infrastructure investments. I've seen the transformative benefits of the most significant climate policy in my lifetime. I've seen the benefits of a president that's worked across the aisle in a bipartisan way to pass many of those bills I just represented, and someone that I think is got a lot left in the tank in terms of being able to deliver policy, principles, values, character. So for all those reasons, I'm all in.
And in addition to that, do you believe that view of yours comes from anywhere else, like loyalty to party? Does that factor in at all?
No, I care about accomplishments. I care about getting things done. We're so consumed in politics, particularly. It's become so performative. It really has. I think one of the frustrations we have with politics and politicians, for that matter, it's all style, no substance. It's entertainment. It's sort of, the weaponization of grievance. It's just, putting, waking up and sort of, putting a crowbar in the spokes of the wheel of the other party. And nothing ever gets done. There's no real progress. And it really changed in the last 3.5 years. We're the envy of the world. I mean, that's the Wall Street Journal headline, not a surrogate for the Biden campaign. That said, no one's naive, and I don't want to be a broken record on all of those attributes. The stacking of stress, the polarization that we've all been through, COVID, issues of inflation, the inflation scars despite being down 2/3, and now we're turning the corner on inflation. I get that's real, and so that's what we've got to overcome, and we've got to mind this gap between performance and perception, and that's what surrogates are about. That's why we're out in the campaign, but I'm about results, and so I'm just a little more old-fashioned. We had an entertainer-in-chief for 4 years, Trump. I don't want to go back to that.
Are any of the points you just listed or you listed in your previous answers, were those brought up at all when it came to your visit with multiple other governors to the White House the other day? Yeah. What can you tell us about that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, your governor was there as well, and everybody would die to have a record like Joe Biden as relates to accomplishments. I mean, the most significant infrastructure investments in our lifetime, $1.2 trillion. In industrial policy, American manufacturing. We talk about America. This is Michigan. American manufacturing, bringing American jobs and supply chains back home. He's proving it. He's doing it in just a matter of a few years. I mean, it's really been extraordinary. I think that was resonant and was certainly part of the conversation yesterday at the White House. Look, he began that meeting, though, on the one question everybody had in mind. We all went there. We all wanted to hear what he had to say. And the two words that were the most resonant were all in. And that's how he began the meeting. That's all I needed to hear. That's why I'm here. I kept my schedule, and I'm going to have his back because he's had our back, the American people's back. Everybody, all of us are better off, and we're all better off. So it's through that lens that I see this world, not red, blue, but all of us, red, white, and blue on 4th of July. Proud of my president, proud of his accomplishments, and a lot of proud governors there yesterday.
And while many prominent Democrats like Governor Newsom and Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer are throwing support behind Biden, a Michigan state representative is now asking him to, quote, pass the torch. State Representative Phil Skaggs, who represents part of Kent County, took to X this week, posting an essay calling for Biden to step down as the Democratic candidate for the presidency. In the essay, Skaggs touts what he believes were Biden's accomplishments in office, pointing to the end of the pandemic, the economy, and the nation's infrastructure. But Skaggs believes that despite this, Biden is not capable of convincing Americans to vote for him in the fall. Skaggs wrote, quote, Biden's inability to be an effective communicator is troubling. We all hoped to see the president demonstrate the sharpness necessary to lead a winning campaign, but we didn't. It was heartbreaking, but the images from the debate are now indelible in the public consciousness. Skaggs didn't name any specific successors to Biden in the essay, but says he will still be supporting the Democratic nominee for president. And at the same time that all eyes in the political realm have been on her next moves and those of her party, Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer's memoir, True Gretch, hit bookstore shelves and online marketplaces Tuesday. Depicting the book's 10 chapters as separate lessons she says she's learned during her time in office and elsewhere, The two-term governor recounts a number of personal experiences and how events from the last 5.5 years of her governorship, including things like a polar vortex, the Oxford High School shooting, and the COVID-19 pandemic, have shaped her outlook. While Whitmer makes no mention of a potential presidential run in the book, an autobiography from prominent party leaders or political figures in the United States has often been a precursor for higher ambitions. But in an interview with the Associated Press, Whitmer denied any thought of seeking to head the Democratic ticket this year should national speculation about a potential exit from President Biden come true. Whitmer telling the AP she believes such speculation is, quote, a distraction more than anything. And just weeks after we told you about an expected multi-million-dollar effort from GOP Senator Tim Scott to shore up support for former President Trump among voters of color in battleground states like ours, the Biden-Harris campaign is also now beginning a Battleground State Outreach campaign in hopes of connecting with Asian American voters. Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to spearhead the effort with her position as the first person of South Asian descent to serve in the role. With events in Pennsylvania and Nevada this week, the campaign tells the Associated Press that events are also being planned here in Michigan, as well as in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia. In a video released by the campaign, Harris said that Asian Americans must be in the rooms where decisions are being made. And one of the highlights of a trip to the polls, aside from getting to have a voice in who will be your elected leaders, is proudly wearing the I voted sticker that comes with it. Now, for the first time, the state is asking for your help in deciding what this year's sticker will look like. The competition, launched in May by Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, allowed residents and students enrolled in Michigan schools the chance to submit for the competition. More than 480 people submitted for the contest, but the Michigan Collegiate Student Advisory Task Force narrowed it down to 25 semifinalists in each of the 3 categories: elementary, middle school, high school, and general, which was open to residents of any age. 3 winning designs will be selected from each separate category, and those stickers will be available for local clerks to order for their polling locations. The winning stickers will be handed out at the polls during the November election. You can cast your vote by going to the Michigan Department of State's website. And if you're from Michigan, you're likely familiar with the only state highway in the country that does not allow personal civilian motor vehicles on the land. But even without them, people on Mackinac Island's M185 could now get pulled over for speeding. Coming up, what the new speed limit is for other vehicles on the iconic shoreline route, and why those in Lansing are putting it in place. At the state capitol, an update on state lawmakers and what's known as the LGBTQ panic defense. A bill to ban that defense in state court has now made it through both the House and the Senate. State lawmakers saying it must be banned. As defined by this bill, this defense in court claims that the discovery, knowledge, or disclosure of things like a victim's sexual orientation or gender identity was provocation for the defendant to act violently toward the victim, or that it resulted in reduced mental capacity, and that as such the defendant can attempt to paint the alleged violence as more reasonable to the court. We spoke with the author of the bill back in March about what she's heard from members of the community about how important they feel it is to ban it.
There have also just been individuals that have reached out talking about why this is important, about how, they fear that if something happens to them, the person that attacks them, or even worse, will be able to use this defense, and then they will have to basically argue for their own humanity in front of either a judge or a jury.
The vote fell along party lines in the House, with the Democratic majority in favor, but did garner some Republican votes in the Senate. One Republican senator tried offering an amendment, believing the bill's language could be interpreted too strictly to include situations where an attacker is cornered or felt pressured. That amendment aimed at only allowing this to apply to instances where such knowledge or discovery was the, quote, sole or exclusive basis for the use of force did not pass the Senate. The bill now heads to Governor Whitmer's desk for a signature. A law signed by Governor Whitmer will limit certain provisions that homeowners associations can enact in the state. The legislation will invalidate any provisions by an HOA that prohibits homeowners from installing and operating energy-saving improvements to their homes like solar panels, rain barrels, insulation, and other similar modifications or improvements. The new law will retroactively do away with previous HOA provisions restricting these energy-saving improvements, as well as prohibiting future energy-saving improvement provisions. A bike around the 8-mile shoreline is often a highlight for those visiting Michigan's iconic Mackinac Island. But don't pedal too hard or you might get pulled over under a new law. While this is the only state highway in the nation where personal civilian motor vehicles are banned, those operating, quote, a vehicle, a bicycle, or any other device on this highway will now be bound by a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit. In a business district, that limit will sit at 10 miles an hour. State Senator John DeMoose, who authored the bill, told a Senate committee earlier this year that unsafe speeds can cause safety hazards when people are going too fast in congested areas and can lead to accidents. Over the past few years, Michigan voters have codified a number of new provisions into the state's constitution surrounding voting rights. Things like no reason absentee voting and at least 9 days of in-person early voting are now enshrined here in our state. Some of what's changed, however, is now being questioned in court. The latest on the legal effort to challenge parts of 2 recent amendments passed by Michigan voters. That's next. As she's set to spend her final months in her current office, term-limited Grand Rapids Governor Gov Bliss is set to step into a new statewide role. Governor Whitmer has announced Bliss would be appointed to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation's Executive Committee. The committee handles providing policy direction and guidance to the MEDC, which provides grants for local community projects, creates programs meant to inspire innovation and connect businesses with resources and employees, and helped create the award-winning You Can in Michigan national marketing campaign, as well as approving the corporate budget and overseeing aspects of the organization. Bliss has been at the forefront of advocating for projects including the new amphitheater now being built in downtown. Bliss will continue in the role until her appointed term expires in April of 2027. A federal appeals court is weighing if it should take up a case by Republican lawmakers that would undo parts of 2 amendments aimed at expanding voting access in the state. The lawsuit targets parts of Proposal 3 of 2018 and Proposal 2 of 2022, which established new state constitutional rights when it comes to voting access. Both were passed by voters with around a 2/3 majority. The Republican-led lawsuit challenges the amendment's regulatory power over federal elections, citing the U.S. Constitution's election clause, which grants state legislatures the power to decide how to conduct federal elections within their state. One of the lawsuit's arguments is that these amendments attempt to bypass the legislature when determining the times, places, and manner of holding elections, instead regulating these in the state constitution. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals received the appellate brief and request for oral arguments at the beginning of the month. The court will now determine whether or not they will hear the case, which was originally thrown out of district court in April. General Motors is set to pay almost $146 million in penalties, according to the Associated Press, after tests by the federal government show they were out of compliance with emission and fuel economy standards. The Environmental Protection Agency is saying that its testing showed that GM pickup trucks and SUVs emit over 10% more carbon dioxide on average than GM claimed. The AP says that the enforcement action will involve nearly 6 million pickups and SUVs. GM estimates that the total amount to resolve the matter will come in at about $500 million. As election season gets closer, many are trying to get up to speed and be educated as possible to inform their vote and the political scene around them. But some areas like campaign finance law can be tricky at times, leading to some questions from viewers. When we come back, we verify whether candidates like former President Donald Trump can use campaign money to pay legal bills. Turning now to the national scene and questions from national viewers. Under federal campaign finance law, can a candidate like former President Donald Trump use campaign money to pay legal bills? Brandon Lewis with our National Verify team breaks down the answer.
Former President Trump has spent millions on legal fees to fight his recent cases. Several Verify viewers asked us whether Trump can use his campaign funds to help cover those bills. We used these sources and found the answer isn't straightforward.
The question of what's legal and illegal is not as clear as we'd like it to be. What I can say is, there are definitely ways for candidates to spend donor money on legal expenses that would not break the law.
The two main ways candidates fund their campaigns are with direct donations or money from political action committees, or PACs. The Brennan Center says almost all of Trump's legal fees are being paid with PAC money. These are funds from Trump-aligned groups like Save America or Make America Great Again Incorporated. Campaign finance law doesn't explicitly prohibit spending PAC money on personal expenses, including legal fees.
Under current law and under current guidance, Trump can use the funds from that leadership PAC to pay his legal expenses for personal matters.
The law is stricter when it comes to using campaign money. The Federal Elections Commission says candidates can only use campaign funds to cover campaign-related expenses, not personal ones. Campaign finance law spells out examples of personal expenses, but certain items like meals, travel expenses, and childcare can go either way. The FEC determines what counts as a personal expense on a case-by-case basis. This means Trump can use his campaign money for some legal bills, but only if it's directly related to his run for office. With you at Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.